So Liz Cheney is pretty consistently terrible. So it's no surprise that she immediately came out to defend Donald Trump's tweets against the squad, or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar. Now, at a press conference at the Capitol with Republican leaders, Cheney not only refused to condemn Donald Trump's tweets, but also he went on the attack, or I'm sorry, she went on the attack against the squad. She joined in, basically. In fact, I want to read her comments to you. She said, quote, "This is the greatest nation that has ever existed, the exceptional nation, and they are wrong when they fail to recognize that no people have ever lived in greater freedom." Okay, so look, so far, I guess it's just a difference of opinion, right? Like, and it's not as if AOC is saying, no, we're horrible, this is a horrible country filled with horrible people. No, that's not what they're saying. That's a mischaracterization from Fox News. What these young women are saying is, hey, look, America, it's got a lot of opportunity, it's got a lot of potential, but right now we are not living up to that potential because there are issues in the country. For example, there are millions of people that don't have health care. And while, there are billions and billions of dollars continuing to flow to the very richest Americans, there are, more homes than homeless people in this country. And so there are some serious problems that we should get together as a country to fix. So now, of course, that message, gets lost among conservative media, conservative pundits, and conservative, of course, members of Congress. Now, as far as she says about exceptional freedom, right? Nobody's lived in greater freedom than in the United States. Well, I don't know. I don't think that's true. In fact, according to the World Liberty Index, the United States is not one of the most free countries. In fact, New Zealand happens to have the most freedom on the planet. New Zealand. In fact, according to their rankings, the 2018 most free countries: New Zealand, Switzerland, Ireland, Australia, Sweden, Norway, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Canada, and Finland. Now, a lot of those are, of course, ties, but those would be, the five, I guess. But again, a lot of those are tied for third and second and fifth, respectively. So look, in case you're wondering, what's the methodology on that? You can't just say that a country is more free than the other. That's true. Now, the methodology, basically, researchers looked at press freedom. If you have a high degree of freedom of the press, which unfortunately we do not here in America, economic liberty. So that's more of like the conservative, hey, get the government out of the markets. Well, the government happens to be highly involved in markets, but not in a good way here in America. In fact, we give corporate subsidies to the tune of billions of dollars, oil subsidies to places like Amazon, who paid no taxes in 2018, despite making $11 billion in profit. So that's high government interference in our politics. And if you're a conservative, you would be angry about that. And actually, there are a lot of conservatives who are very angry at the corporate cronyism, picking winners and losers that we have in the government right now. So they also looked at social liberty, how accepting you are, the government is, and how, they're able to protect LGBT folks, racial minorities in their country, things like that. So they looked at all those different factors, and they came up with this list where New Zealand happened to be the most free country in the world, because it's the most free, the most fair. So now it turns out a lot of these countries that were on this list also were very progressive. So they ended up having things like universal health care, free or at least very, very much reduced college tuition rates, generous social programs, and in fact, they are actually all social democracies. Now, unfortunately, Liz Cheney looks at those countries and they think, socialism. They're the same as Venezuela. By the way, Venezuela, one of the least free countries in the world, according to this very ranking. So, now she says, quote, our colleagues, our socialist colleagues on the other side of the aisle are wrong when they advocate abortion up to the moment of birth. That's not true, including partial term abortion. I don't even know what that means. Late term abortion, and when they refuse to mandate care for babies who are born alive. Well, if that child is going, if that child's going to die, and there's no medical way to save it, then what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to make the child, the newborn, the infant, as comfortable as possible. And there's no evidence that we are not doing that. And look, so all of that, of course, is just complete nonsense, right? Late-term abortion. Now, she wants to turn this into an abortion debate. Well, that's interesting. Late-term abortion, incredibly rare. Why? Why does it happen? Well, it happens either because the fetus isn't viable, the child, the newborn, the fetus is going to die anyway, and the health is, of the mother is in very much danger. It's not something to take lightly or turned into a political football. Yet, at the same time, here's Liz Cheney turning it into a political football. She's literally the worst. There's more. Cheney also said, quote, they're wrong when they say their programs help people at the lower end of the economic spectrum. As if giving tax cuts to the rich, which you're in favor of, helps. No. She says, every one of their socialist programs would create massive new government dependency and end the very economic growth we need to ensure everyone can prosper. All right. So, again, as I pointed out before, the happiest and most successful countries have programs like universal health care, free college, universal child care, high wages, right? Paid leave for new parents, things like that. This is what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the rest of these Justice Democrats are pushing for. These kind of policies. This is the stuff that Liz Cheney says is socialism. The only people that she's looking out for, Cheney's looking out for, are members of her own social class, the wealthy. But she's not done. She then also goes to imply that, not just imply, but to state flat out that these four women of color they're the racists. Quote, these congresswomen are wrong that any individual seat at the table is only valuable, only legitimate if that person espouses some pre-approved set of beliefs deemed appropriate based on their religion, gender, or race. When they say that, that's racist. Wait. Well, okay. What? That doesn't make any sense. So you're going to call these four women racist? Why? It doesn't make sense at all. The whole premise is flawed. And besides, this is a way for you to cover for Donald Trump, who has said and done racist things. I mean, you guys remember Central Park 5, right? Now, this Central Park 5, they went to prison. Donald Trump ran a full-page ad saying that they deserved the death penalty. They ended up not actually doing the crime. What did Donald Trump do then? He said, well, I don't care. I don't care if they've been found innocent. They were still in the park. They had to have been up to something. Not only that, but he also tried, of course, to prevent black people from renting rooms in Trump Tower. I mean, I could go on. There are plenty of other racist examples. And telling, of course, four women of color who are all Americans to go back to their country is only one of them. That statement, by the way, is the last defense of a racist snowflake who has no arguments against actually pointing out how our country has not been traditionally good to non-white people. If you love America, if you really loved America and didn't just go around with blind patriotism, you would want to make it the best country that it can be. And a good country takes care of its citizens. And part of that, of course, being a good country is being welcoming to everyone, to new perspectives, and better in new ways of doing things. These women, they do have ideas on how to better do things. And the truth is that Donald Trump, Liz Cheney, and the rest of the Republican Party, as well as the corporate Democrats, they are afraid of change because then it threatens them and their power. And one last thing. This rhetoric against the squad is dangerous. First of all, she said that they were baby killers and radical socialists. Well, what does that do? Well, I mean, just ask Dr. George Tiller. Oh, right. You can't because he was murdered. I mean, look, these women already have a target on their back. Now they have a bigger target on their back from somebody who is unhinged and possibly heavily armed. It is dangerous to be a progressive, as it always has been, but it's also dangerous to be a woman, and a woman of color at that, in America. AOC herself has been threatened, stalked, harassed. She gets constant death threats, rape threats. I mean, they all receive them, but especially AOC and especially Ilhan Omar. I mean, it's horrifying. And yet here you have somebody like Liz Cheney who continues to do this dangerous rhetoric and continues to put them in an actual physical harm. Liz Cheney is a terrible person. She is gross, and unfortunately, she's never going to change. She's always going to be a terrible person, and the terrible apple does not fall far from the terrible tree. She is a Cheney after all.